Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. On the show today, Eirik Skarholt. So Eirik is in Norway, and the name didn't give it away. And he is a general mind-body person, coaches, does different things. I just sort of want to get to know him, so I've invited him on the show. So, sir, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How did you get interested in the body? What was the beginning of your story with this?
I used to compete snowboarding when I was younger. So from I was 15, I stopped playing soccer and I started competing snowboarding, and I wanted to become a professional snowboarder. When I was 19, I had a breakthrough in snowboarding. I was doing a lot of cliff jumping, and that caught the attention of the snowboard scene in Norway, and I got some sponsorships. And then, boom, I had a big crash, and I couldn't ride snowboard for 2 years. And basically, I dislocated my tibia. So basically, my leg bone was pointing 30 degrees to the left, and I tore everything in the knee and had some avulsion fracture in there, and it was a complicated operation, and they couldn't fix me in the end. So I had to take matters in my own hands. That kind of led me into the health path.
So you're a pretty serious kind of extreme sports person, and then you kind of hit injury, and you went, okay, I really need to look at the kind of healing side of things.
Yeah, I had to put matters in my own hands and read everything I could about knees and muscles around the knee joint. And that ended up choosing to become a chiropractor. So I started out as a massage therapist in 2003 while I was doing my degree. And of course, being a sports junkie, I started working with a Australian footy league on the women's side, the best team in Victoria, the Derby Falcons. They're awesome. Took my chiro degree with osteopaths. So I studied with them, and I just tried to basically use my education to try to walk again properly or run properly, because that was one of the things I couldn't do, was to run properly, and I was kind of half limping.
You know, it's pretty motivating when you've got your own injuries. I had a repeatedly torn hamstring for a year doing aikido.
Yep.
And it just kept tearing, and like really quite to the point where I was limping through most of my day. And in that year, I learned more about sort of healing arts than I had, you know, in the sort of 10 years previous. I also know what it's like to hurt yourself snowboarding. I ruptured a shoulder, an AC joint snowboarding, which wasn't much fun. Mm-hmm. And again, one of those injuries, I think, motivate us to go, okay, well, what's gone wrong here? How can I help myself? Yeah.
It's interesting how we work that way, and some people give up, and some people just go for it, you know. So it's not everybody who goes into this healing mode, you know. It's we're not conditioned to actually trust our own bodies, and we're not conditioned and programmed to take charge in our own hands. It's like, oh, I hurt myself, I need to go to see a doctor. I hurt myself, I need to go and have a surgery. It's actually the whole system of health is actually put so that you put the trust in someone else's hands.
It is a way. It's disempowering in a way, isn't it? You go and you ask an expert, and they tell you what's wrong with you, and you accept what they say. And you know, I take pills from the doctor sometimes. I think I don't really know what this is. I'm just taking on I'm putting something in my body on the, you know, on the advice, essentially. But I've also noticed, though, in recent years, there's been an erosion of trust in authority generally, which suits my personality. But this has happened all over the world. And the medical profession, for example, I have friends who are doctors, and they say it's really annoying because people come in and they've learned stuff on the internet about their own illness. It's really annoying. They know more than me about their condition. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound bad. That sounds pretty positive. You know, and obviously there's some tons of stuff out there, but does seem to be this issue of trust and authority generally in the world with politicians, with institutions, but that has impacted the medical scene.
Yeah, definitely. I had a client on last week who he constantly, every week he comes in and he's got some new stuff he's Googled, and he's got some new exercises, and sometimes I say, well, maybe this time you Google is not hasn't got the right answer for you, but sometimes when what he comes up with is brilliant, I say, well, that's a really good Google search. So it's got two sides, you know.
Yeah, it's become almost like a sort of major meta life skill for anyone in the modern world, is how to use the profusion of information that's out there intelligently, because it's you know, for example, this podcast is 250 episodes. There's a lot of hours of listening. But, you know, how would someone use that information to learn about embodiment or develop their own embodied practice? That's what we do. Some of the online courses I think we do, that's more the value add we give. It's not so much information, but how to deal with all the information that's out there.
Yeah. You know, the word diagnosis, you know, it's if you separate the word diagnosis into two words, which is DI, and agnos, it's two people who are agnostics.
Uh-huh.
It's the patient and it's the doctor or the therapist, and together they're finding a working solution that they are going to try out and see if that works. But we treat diagnosis as if they are answers, and I think that's where a lot of the problem is. You know, you've probably seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right?
I love it. Yeah,
and the computer is like, it takes thousands of years to find the answer of the meaning of life, and it comes up with the number 42. You know? So it's this search of the human mind to have this perfect answer of how to live your utopian life, you know, and diagnosis is a perfect example of it, you know.
Lovely. And yeah, it is almost like a detective story, I find, with health. That I kind of want it to, you know, some part of me is childlike and wants this daddy relationship, you know, mummy relationship, where I go to the doctor and say, my foot hurts, and the doctor magically says, here's a pill, and it gets better. But actually, my experience, particularly in middle age, with sort of, you know, I've got a kind of weird stomach thing at the moment. And at first he thought it was a bacterial infection, and, you know, we did a test and got something. They thought it was acid, and it wasn't the acid. And it's become a sort of mutual problem-solving exercise where we're going, well, we tried this, and is it stress levels? Well, no, because my wife also has it, and she's not so stressed. So, okay, you know, and it's you can see for the doctor, it's a bit of a struggle to work in a kind of collaborative, exploratory way. Yeah, his sort of first two expert guesses haven't worked. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's almost like a new thing for him. But I keep coming back because it's free and it's around the clinics next to my house, and I'm like, well, what else is possible? But
yeah, exactly. That's a good question, actually. What else is possible? Because that keeps your curiosity up at a high level, you know, and that's the key. You know, I tell my patients that I actually use the same word, like. This case is out of the ordinary. This is not bread and butter for a musculoskeletal therapist. And we need to do some detective work, you know, and you just got to trust me, and you just got to trust that the references and good words that you got from your friend sending you to me, that you have to trust that we will find the answer eventually. But I need your help. I'm doing 50% of the work, and you're doing 50% of the work, and together we'll find a solution, you know.
Yeah,
the body is super intelligent, and we need to connect more to our bodies. That's my main mission, I think, with everything I do.
Well, you're on the right podcast. In terms of what you do now, then I know you do business coaching. Do you still do this kind of health work? Give me a sense of what's your daily work.
Well, it's everything. It's this week, for example, I've had 5 clients with musculoskeletal problems, and we work on general stuff. One of the guys has a herniated discs. The other guy has some knee problems, so it comes with running, like runner's knee. And a third one has a kind of a systemic stress, high stress level, causing a lot of tension, and needs to work on sleep patterns and learn how to meditate. And then I've had a workshop on where each and every employee is finding a personal, high exciting vision for how they want to live their life, so that they wake up and go to work and they're actually triggered about their own vision, about their own life, so that they can spend their 8 hours at work paying that back to themselves rather just to cashing in the check. And then I've had two leaders in two companies. One of them, he wants to learn how to communicate with his colleagues and employees from a personal level as a friend, but he doesn't want to become too much of a friend because then the results, they won't respect his leadership. Mm-hmm. So he wants to find that balance between seeing his employees and being a captain on the ship. And the other guy, he wants to learn how he can use Kundalini breathing exercises with some movement and to short down his time because he runs 4 companies and he just wants to make money. So I'm teaching him how to do physical exercises coupled with breathing, coupled with meditation and visualization, so that he can spend less time on having the highest possible energy to do his work and not affect his sleep. So it's very varied what I do. I love everything that has to do with the human body and the human mind. And I can't I can't let go of the whole working with the body health perspective, even though 80% of what I do is coaching and giving speeches to companies when it comes to management and sales.
So, I mean, a lot of what you're doing sounds like life coaching mixed with this kind of well-being health work.
Yeah, and also sales also. So it's mix of that.
So sales, how does that come in? I missed that.
Well, basically, I've done workshops where because one of my strengths is that I'm really a good observer, and I'm really good at giving feedback. So basically, I created this this workshop with real estate agents 2-3 years back, where I come in and they're doing their sales training. So basically, doing role play. One of the real estates is the client, and one of the real estates is the real estate agent, and they're playing a role play where the client is choosing a personal type, like from the DISC analysis. Like I'm going to pretend that I'm very analytical and always knows the right answer. And then the real estate agent is trying to communicate and optimize the communication with that specific personal type. Then I'm sitting in the room and watching their energy. I'm watching how they use their arms, the tone of voice, their all the non-verbal communication, and trying to get them to think of something that puts them in a good state, so they're actually selling from a genuine, authentic themselves, to rather some fake it till you make it kind of patterns. Mm-hmm. So that's the sales part I'm doing.
Okay, I mean, state regulation's huge, isn't it? And it's a sort of a magic thing when people realise that they can actually change how they are. It's not about a trick necessarily. It's just about genuinely be able to shift where they're coming from.
Yep. Curiosity, basically.
So I'm there's a lot here and I'm not quite sure where to go in with it. So I'm thinking, let's start at the beginning, in that we don't talk much on here about sort of extreme sports. We've not had a snowboarder on, and you've had a couple of parkour people. But maybe let's sort of start back there. Like, what was the initial draw to the snowboarding, and what did you bring from that into what you do now?
The reason I was drawn to snowboarding was that I was tired of having a coach on my soccer team, because I was playing at the second highest level as a junior player. So between the age of 15 to 17, I was on a team that was really performing well in Norway, and we had 2 teams, and one was the people who was half serious, and we had one team where the people were like super serious and they want to be national players and etc. And the last year I was on that soccer team, I managed to get into the best team. And when I got there, the coach was he was fear-based coaching. He was basically like a military sergeant and punishing people and So I lost interest because sports for me was to have fun and to blow your mind in terms of what limits you can break through. So I went from there, and I was drawn to snowboard because it was in the beginning. It was in the 90s. It was probably 95, 96 or something. So snowboarding was almost illegal. Skateboarding had just been legal in Norway in 1989. And snowboard was considered the punk.
Sorry, skateboarding was illegal in Norway.
It was illegal in Norway. My brother had bought himself a skateboard when he was in France, and he came home and the cops took it at the airport in 88 or 87 or something.
Such fucking communists out there. Why was
I know.
Why was skateboarding illegal? I'm still trying to. Sorry, I'm a bit shocked by this. Why?
Well, I've never asked that question actually, because we were rebels back then. So we were like, yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, we're breaking the law. We were kids. So I looked up to my brother because he got stopped by the cops. I never actually looked into it, but I think it was something that they probably saw as a hazard to the public. If a skateboard will run down the hill, it would hit the window and break it, or hit the car, or someone would die in traffic. I don't know what it was a fear-based attempt to protect the public, I guess. I have no clue. But in 89, it was made legal. So snowboarding, I was drawn.
Sorry, I just want to say about the Nordic countries. People often paint in America and England as these sort of idyllic social states, but they forget there's a certain amount of kind of conformity and control that comes with that, right? Banning something like that. That's to me a good example of it. It's an individual's right to kind of fall off the skateboard and hurt themselves if they want, but that gets kind of banned at a state level. So you're doing this thing that's kind of rebellious and cool, and it's like a bit edgy.
Yeah. And also there was no parents screaming at the sideline telling you what to do and sharing for your performance and giving you high fives and rewards for being a good sports person. It was just friends, and we were playing around and we were making up tricks as we go, and we were just being creative and playful. So that was why I was drawn into it originally. And then I found it as an outlet for restlessness. I was a very restless kid. I was smart in school, but I wasn't there. I couldn't sit still. So I went through school with good grades, but I had like 30% absence from my classes almost. And the time I spent in the snowboard hills was just an outlet of energy, pretty much. And then as I was growing up closing into my 20th and 21st birthday, I started having a lot of issues. My parents got divorced when I was 15, and it was pretty bad. My mom was sick before they got divorced, and it was pretty heavy. I'm not going to give you all the details about that divorce, but it was pretty a bad situation. So I had a lot of anger, and I think I used snowboarding as an outlet to see how fearless I could be, so that I didn't have to feel all the emotions I had for my parents at the time. So I was an angry kid jumping out of cliffs to see if I could survive, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. I'm kind of picking up there the difference between that natural urge to play and explore, an intrinsic motivation for movement, as opposed to kind of fear-based coaching and the social reward and the prestige. It does seem like there's a natural urge for movement and play, which almost gets caged in a kind of modern sport context very often. Yeah.
And also back in the day, in the contests, it was like nowadays it's how big spins you can do, and it's all about the acrobatics. Back in the day, we had actually a prize for the most stylish backside 180. So that's a very slow moving, stylish trick, and we actually had prizes for that in the contests. And so it was an art more than a acrobatic technical sport. Back in the day, it was an art form, and a lot of the best snowboarders at the time, they were also artists. They were musicians, they were painters, they were graffiti artists, they were performing arts. So we saw ourselves as rebels and misfits, just going against conformity and and all that stuff. And also it was a artful expression, and we can really express ourselves. We tweak the foot that way, and if we had the arm laid back like that, it looked like we were having a good time in the air. We would like enjoying the movement, not just performing a technical thing. So it was, and the fearlessness of seeing if you can do, like the guys who would get the most cred was the guy who would do the biggest jump with a small dash of technicality and a high level of artistic expression. Those were the guys that was pioneers, and that's where you got Terje Håkonsen in, who really pushed the boundaries on that level.
And what do you bring from sort of that world into what you do now?
Well, when I was finished chiropractic school and came back to Norway in 2008, I went straight into a clinic where they were working already with the best snowboarders of Norway. My mentor that was running the clinic, he had already been to the European Open. He had already been into the Arctic Challenge, which was the most respected contest at the time. And so I went straight into working with snowboarders at a high level, international level. Before I even had my license to operate in Norway, I was already working with, I already treated Terje Håkonsen and Andy Finch and Kevin Pierce and all the legends of that time. And so basically 2 months after I started working there, we went to Italy, Alagna, and went snowboarding and skiing because my mentors were skiers. And I was a team building trip. So I started there as a intern, and after 2 months we were already on a team trip to the Alps. And the guys saw me snowboard, and they were really impressed of the fluidity, how I was very fluent in the face of obstacles running down the slope. So if I saw a difficult path in going down the slope, I would be very creative and very fluent in finding the right angles and the right turns in order to make it look good. So basically, to keep it short, my mentor, he said, "Hey, Eirik, if you remember the feeling that you have when you're going down the slopes, and you put that feeling and that mental state with your clients and with your patients, you're going to be the best chiropractor in Norway in no time." So basically, I just try to reproduce a really good feeling, a really good state while I'm working, whether it's a workshop, or if it's a speech, or if it's body work. I'm trying to reproduce that snowboard feeling, basically. So it's giving me tons.
Extreme sports or martial arts or yoga, these things, they give us a reference point that we spend quite a lot of time in exceptional states. There's a way in which, like, if you're doing these things regularly, you're kind of forced to, when you're snowboarding at a reasonable level or doing martial arts at a high level, whatever, you're forced to kind of going, okay, this is the necessary state in some ways almost for survival for those sports. And then instead of it being an occasional peak thing that happens once in a lifetime or once every few years, it's happening for an hour a day. And your body gets a reference point, I think, for something that is a little bit different from the average guy on the street.
Definitely.
So how do you go about shifting into a state like that then? So there's this reference point, and your mentor's saying, like, hey, if you just do that while you're being a chiropractor, it'd be great. But how?
Well, do you ask me personally how I get to that state, or how I coach my clients?
Then maybe with clients, yeah.
Well, everybody has a moment in their life where they felt really good, but they don't necessarily define that moment as a success or as a performance, because we reward high-level athletes and entrepreneurs who make a lot of money as successful. So when a guy who comes into my clinic and I ask him, so when's the last time you felt that you were performing? And the person will say, I have no fucking clue. Then I ask him, so can you ever remember you did something where you got feedback that you were a great person or you did something great? And then the person would say something like, well, one time I
I helped a friend. He was about to divorce his wife, or he could say something. He was about to kill himself, or he was about to do something really bad to his friends. And I actually managed to stop it, or actually made him to change his mind. And people don't look at those things as performance. You know, they think a performing state needs to be with something related to sports or money or being a famous person or something like that. And the thing is, like, you have success if you've helped one person one time. And if you can catch that feeling or that state you were in when you were helping out another person, that is a really good feeling that you can work on from there. So it's all about asking the right questions to people, I guess, and to get them to realize that everyday things are actually just as high performing as a guy who wins a giant slalom with 1/100th of a second or something like that.
Right. So you could have a dad who's kind of like feeding a baby with one hand and cleaning the kitchen with the other and answering his 5-year-old's incessant questions while doing that. And this guy might actually be in a really flow, sort of optimal dad flow state of just really like in the zone of doing his parenting really well, but he's not going to get the credit for doing the backflip, you know?
Exactly. And the thing is that when you say that to that dad, he would go, oh no, that's not performing because a man shouldn't do this stuff. You know, there's so much stigma around a dad being, well, it's less stigma now, fortunately, because we've come to 2020. But like if you 5 years ago, that the dad wouldn't say that would be performance at all, you know.
Because there's a stigma there, or maybe just even, let's say it was a mum and there wasn't social stigma, but there might be in Norway. There would be a sort of ordinariness to it that would make them sort of question, like, hey, can you be the sort of ordinary exceptional, you know? Yeah. All right. I mean, give me some other examples of what works then when you're coaching people. What do you find is really effective in coaching practice?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I think my number one tool as a coach is to don't have any point of views about the person. So I try not to go on Facebook, or I try to have as little information about the client as possible. And basically I put myself in a state where this is a bit difficult to explain, but I put myself in a state where I see the person in front of me as having all the answers, and I'm kind of just trying to create the space and where trust and a good vibe energy is present so that the client can discover that for himself. So basically it's a combination of being present with a lot of self-confidence, with a high and positive energy. So very optimistic, but not like super crazy excited. And being very careful, but not careful in a negative way, but very aware of everything that's in that room, and just allowing for that person to just open up slowly. I think that's the number one tool.
So being open, not having super expectations, and allowing that person to sort of, I guess I definitely feel this coaching and interviewing as well. There's a way in which part of me kind of wants to push and kind of pull the flower up out of the earth, you know, and then actually there's actually sort of stepping back and going, you know what, let's just give this a bit of space, a bit of patience with what's needed here.
Yeah. Well, that's a push and pull technique, you know. It's like sometimes you need to push and challenge in order for people to realize and wake up. And sometimes you need to lean back and let them talk. And that's the art of timing, you know, and that just comes with experience. The more you kind of push those boundaries, and I've made so many mistakes with clients where they go, I think you're a bit too much now, Eirik. This is way too challenging for me. And then I learned more about that fine line, you know, and it's a push and pull thing, I think.
You know, I think a lot of people who do our kind of professions are kind of extreme people, the extreme sports, the martial arts, or the, friends of mine climb mountains and go to deserts and things. And that can actually sort of be a bit much for the average climb.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I think in the beginning, I was only seeing people that were very similar to me. So I would only connect with people who were extreme. And then I learned that there's a godzillion number of different personalities out there. And I was more curious about other types of clients. So curiosity led me to, okay, how can I coach the extreme snowboarder, and how can I coach the extremely silent client who's reading books and collecting stamps, and I learned how to I don't know, fine tune the perception and awareness in the moment in order to be present with those people too. I think,
What else do you find is just really effective in working with people then? Are there particular techniques, their particular models, like there's sort of anything else that you think, this is my go-to for me on a regular basis?
I think speaking the truth is always valuable. saying it as it is.
Is that partly cultural? Because I found the Norwegians one of the most conflict-averse people on the planet.
Yeah, it might be a cultural thing. I get a lot of feedback from the clients that are most happy with what I do. Is I love it when you are very direct and you take control and you tell me what it is. But at the same time, it's I don't want to be that person that gives them all the answers. So I like to sometimes beat around the bush, as you say, and don't go straight forward. And so it's two techniques. It's the one is asking them open question. Yeah. Asking open question is a perfect example, and being direct is another perfect example. And another thing as well, like silence is so beautiful. So just saying something and being silent, asking a question and being silent. The combination of those two is what I really like, because when they get silent, people express emotions, So that's a good one. I'm trying to think of, because I can hear that you want something more like precise.
No, okay. No, actually, I want to go back to your first answer where you just sort of said telling the truth. Like, I noticed myself laughing, and it's almost weird that we live in a world where just telling the truth is one of the most powerful kind of coaching techniques there is. In a kind of a world of bullshit and advertising, all the rest of it, kind of just a bit of straight talking sometimes, I think is super refreshing.
Yeah. Well, you look at Donald Trump, for example, who is one of my favorite person on this planet. The reason he got a lot of voters, and I was using irony there, the reason he got a lot of voters and the people say, I love Donald Trump. He says it like it is. He tells it like it is. So he's just saying what he feels. And I think truth is so much easier to digest than manipulation and going around it, and because a lot of therapists, they want to fix people, and when you're not saying the truth, the client or the patient will smell that the therapist is trying to get underneath his or her skin, and then the ego will just put up all these barriers and shut it down, because the ego is so strong, in everybody. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? The yin approach of sort of coaching, where you ask people questions, on the one hand, on the positive, it can really enable people space to come up with their own solutions, which can be much stickier than just telling people stuff. And as you say, if you just tell people stuff, it can be this kind of authoritarian, kind of disempowering thing, right? And equally, I think as a coach or facilitator or whatever, if you're a bit too tricky, people smell it and they don't like it. They're like, where are you coming from? What's, like one of the things I always challenge is behind every question, no question is innocent. Every question comes from an assessment. And there's a dance between these two, sort of the yin and yang here, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I always start my sessions with a new client. I always start with, it's so good to meet you. I'm very curious to get to know you, so that I show that I'm interested in them. And then my second thing is that I say that within these four walls, nothing gets out. You can actually sue me if something gets out. And I don't say that because that they feel safe. I say that so that they know that it's 100% certain that everything stays in the room, and therefore they can open up. I lost what was my point here.
So we're talking about yin and yang and coaching, how you establish that rapport and relationship in the beginning with the client.
Yeah. So I always start. Yeah, truth. That was the subject. So basically, once I've said that, my next thing I say to them is like, okay, I've had results with clients because that's why you're sitting in this chair. But the reason I get results is because I know that I don't have all the answers for you. I know for 100% sure that you have all the answers, and it's my job to pick them out of you so that I'm just a mirror on your thoughts, and we'll work from there. And it's not my job to fix you. It's my job to make sure that you find the right tools and the solutions for you. And if that's not me, I have a network of people that I'm definitely 100% sure can help you. So I'm honest that I'm not the only one who can fix them. Yeah. And that makes them feel that my ego is at a level where I'm not important, but they are.
Yeah, so putting the client in the center and that kind of service orientation of like, hey, I'm not just here to take your money. If I'm not the best fit, I'll find somebody better because actually I'm serving you here. That is a nice feeling. I remember when I was in the Apple store once and they said, look, we sell this, but you can actually get it cheaper online. And I was, okay. They're actually putting my needs as a customer ahead of their own, short-term profit. And immediately was like much more trusting in what the guy was saying to me about other stuff. I was like, okay, that's a sort of, interesting spot. I didn't feel like I had to defend myself. Like a lot of the time when I'm in a shop or with dealing with a company that I'm, getting services from in my businesses that, I do that all the time. It might be a web company or an SEO company, or even another human being. There can be that sense of like, okay, do I have to defend and look out for my own interests, or are they at least considered by this other person?
Yeah.
I think there's a fundamental difference that you can pick up somatically when you're with different human beings. Am I being used, or which is on the one hand, it can be very dangerous, right up to I could still win, but only if it wins for them. Right out to the other end of the spectrum, which would be like selfless, saint-like service, which we've probably had a few times in our life from, maybe our mother or someone who loves us, or a particular Indian guru we met who might happen to have been really in that genuine 100% space. And there's sort of scale, isn't there, from purely using someone as a means to an end and not caring at all about their interests, right through to the kind of selfless service, which I strive for example, when I'm teaching. But if I'm honest, I catch myself making a joke more for my own amusement than for the group. So, it's not like I'm taking a lot from them or abusing them, but there's some little way that I start to serve myself will sort of creep in.
Yeah. I think I got a funny image in my head because when I listen to people talk, I get images in my head. And when you were talking now, there was two people that I saw in that Apple store, and one was Dalai Lama and the other one was Satan.
Right. Okay. It turns the spectrum. Yeah. And it's kind of a clarity for me. And it sounds kind of obvious, but it's just nice to sit with that for a minute. Because it's a nice clarity of, and that's a question I can ask myself. When we're in any relationship, is how much have I started to slide along that scale? Now, I'm not imagining most listeners are kind of raping or killing people or anything that would be like an extreme version of that. But I think at any moment we can go, okay, am I in service to this person here? And actually sometimes it's okay to choose not to be, right? To be like, you know what, I I feel like this is being taken rather than given, and I'm going to set a boundary or walk away, which is, for me, and one of the nice things about, say, a coaching session is it's very clean. It's like, okay, 50 minutes, I'm here for you. You've paid your money. We've got this time. I'm not doing anything else but trying to help you as best I can for this 50 minutes. And there's, it nearly always cheers me up, I find, when I'm in a bad mood, if I have a coaching session, because I usually do about one every couple of days. It's not my main thing. Having that selfless orientation for that hour nearly always takes me away from my own problems and completely cheers up my mood, I find. Do you have that experience?
Yeah. I find that the best coaching sessions I have is where I lose completely control over time and space and don't remember what happened afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a good indicator that it's been in a good state of flow. And I feel so fortunate that I can work as a coach because every person that comes in the room gives me new information that makes me grow. And it's not always that the new information is completely new, but it enforces something that I've seen over a long period of time, either in myself or with clients. That means that I can use that experience to help new people, but I also grow as a person. So, and I've said it to some of my clients sometimes. It's like at the end of a session, I would say, wow, thank you for being a client. I actually learned something new today. And then they go, yeah, I'm glad I could be of service. And then I make a joke about it. And it's, the best part is I'm actually getting paid and you're teaching me stuff. And then we start laughing about it. So I don't do that too much, but I do it with the people that I know for a long time. And
it's interesting. I've made that joke too, and I definitely relate to that. And sometimes I see the client go, yeah, but why am I paying you? You know what I mean? If that's really true, that's really true at a certain point. It's like, okay, I always kind of go, I like to learn from my sessions, but I don't know, sometimes I kind of smell bullshit when people are like, yeah, I learn as much from my clients as they learn from me. I'm like, really? Then why are they paying you? Like that can be
it's a fine line because you're actually learning all the time, but so if you say it too much, they are going to start losing respect and they're going to start actually questioning why they're actually going to see you because you're saying it all the time, and so I think that happened once to me. I was so excited to work with this client and I was learning so much every single time, and I've said it a little bit too much that I felt that I was losing the respect and the integrity of actually being of service to that person. And suddenly the person stopped calling and stopped seeing me.
Yeah.
It took like 3, 4, 5 months or something like that. And the person called back and, hey, Eirik, how's it going? It's been a long time. I'm in a jam right now. Can I have a session? And the person comes in and we have some excellent coaching. And then I asked, so you used to come every second week for like 2 years and you were just exhilarated by everything we did. And like, well, it seems like I was giving you more than you were giving me. So I feel to come back. And I'm like, you shouldn't say everything out loud,
Sometimes it's not, huh? And I think maybe, I'm guessing you have a similar personality in some ways around this, that for people like us who are sort of peer oriented, kind of relaxed, not very formal people, kind of casual, that doesn't always serve the client to be super peer friendly. They actually want a little bit of professionalism. They want that slightly more boundary than might actually be my tendency. And I definitely see that with some clients. I've got, for example, one coach who's quite a good friend, and I've needed to put things in place. Like when he cancelled a session, he said, hey, can you rearrange? It was less than 24 hours notice. And I could have rearranged, but I wanted to say, no, I'm going to charge you for that session. And it was a way of sort of asserting professionalism. He's like, okay, mate, fair enough. That is normal. He realized that was normal. That's a normal professional thing in the UK. If you cancel less than 24 hours or 48, it's charged as a session. And I just put that in place. So there's a few things like if he's 5 minutes late, I'll say, can you actually be on time? I would really appreciate that. I'll kind of call him on that being late. And those little things might sound a bit uptight and they kind of go against something in me that wants to just be friendly and pally. But I've learned that actually helps the client to have that little bit of boundary there.
Yeah. It's a fine line, because if you're a friend, they will open up. But if you're too much of them, they won't listen to you, and they won't respect what they get, And I've had this conversation over the years, because maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was working 24/7. I had like 10-hour days with clients, and I lost all my friends. So my coolest patients or my coolest clients, they became my source for friendship. And I see a lot of therapists out there. They work so much and they don't have friends outside that they actually start looking for their patients and their clients to become their friends. And that's if you want to go there, yeah, go ahead. But I found that it's very important to have a separate life than just work. It's otherwise those boundaries will get washed away.
I think I just want to highlight this, because I think it's important that if we don't meet our needs for friendship, and I've seen this sexually as well, that people are having those needs met outside of client relationships. The temptation for people starts to try and make the students the friend, or in the worst cases, try and make them the lovers or whatever. But it's like you're already getting those needs met, and they're normal human needs for affection and belonging and contact and touch. I think as facilitators, because my experience is I love what I do so much, I could just do it almost 24/7. Yeah. And well, hang on a minute, I'm actually not looking after my own needs. And then there can become that urge to meet those needs with a client. Like, be my friend, give me validation. It's like, no, it's not a fucking job. Your job is to serve them. So it's like, I think that is important to track that we are, even if we love our work, that we're actually looking after ourselves.
Yeah, it's super important. Super important.
How do you decide? So you're trained in a few techniques, you've got different background and different things. I can hear that. This is a kind of theme of the podcast, really. Like, how do we make sense of the mess? Someone comes to you, let's say I come to you with my stomach problem, or someone comes to you and they've got a creaky neck. How do you know whether to send them to a nutritionist, to do osteopathy on them, to do Alexander technique, to get them to do a Feldenkrais lesson, or to coach them because it's actually some psychological thing? How do you make sense of all these wonderful things we have available?
Well, that was actually a problem in the beginning. No, actually, it was not. It was easier in the beginning, because in the beginning I was only doing massage therapy and chiropractic. So it was easy for me to see, I can help you up to this point, and after this you need some acupuncture or you need to see the nutritionist. So basically, when they came into my office, I would just take it as far as I could take it. And then I needed to be really honest about when I couldn't serve them more, and then send them off to someone else. And that was from my mentor, my first mentor in that practice. He was very big about the whole honesty thing. If you sell them something they don't need, they are going to know it. Your patients are smart people, and so you got to know. You got to let your ego down when it's important to lead that person over to someone else. Now, the problem that I've got, which is not a problem because I've solved it already, but the problem I started getting was when I used all these different kind of techniques. So the client came in and it was like a little bit osteo, a little bit chiro, and then a little bit acupuncture, and then some muscle deep tissue therapy stuff. And then I could see they needed to breathe differently, and I taught them how to breathe. And then we started coaching. It was a time limit problem. So I had to separate the sessions. So, for example, if I saw them for 5 sessions and doing muscular and chiropractic work, and I said, okay, let's see what we get out of 5 sessions. And then we evaluate, and then we take a new stand. And then we go, okay, so the next 5 sessions now are going to be just breathing techniques. And then we did that. So you segmentize your work so that you don't put everything, all the spices in the soup at the same time. You put one spice in and you taste the flavor and you feel how it goes. And then you put another spice in and you feel the flavor and you see how it goes. And eventually my toolkit was so large that I had to stop thinking pretty much. So that happened maybe 5 years back. My toolkit was so large that I had to work on pure intuition. And basically I would then, this feels right. I had to trust that I knew without using my pragmatic analytical brain too much. And just exploring my gut feeling over those last 5 years gives me a very good, strong indicator of how much we should focus on this for how long before we change it up. And also, you will also develop the muscle of knowing that if this person really needs a different kind of quality in you as a person, to send them off to someone else, because you can't have a chemistry with everyone when it comes on a relationship level. Like, you can't get trust from everyone. That's impossible.
Right, yeah, there's which clients are a fit. We need to wrap up fairly soon. I'm sorry, I need to leave out. Yep. I'm going to make my dance class, believe it or not. So cool. So I'm hearing there, once you've kind of got so many intellectual theories and possibilities, sometimes it becomes intuitive, but there's also this experimenting aspect of like, hey, okay, you're grinding your teeth, but let's try this exercise. Okay, let's try this diet. Okay, let's try this sleep thing. And actually do experiments. So, it seems to be a mixture of those two that can work well, right? Like some intuitive, some like, okay, I've seen a case study like this before, and some that's just like, you know what, let's give something a try.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So where do people find you online? I didn't actually find your website Googling. So where's the best place to find you online?
My websites are all in Norwegian, and we're getting it translated as soon as possible. But the current website is www.frem, F for Frederick, R for Romania, E for Eirik, M for Morocco, .as. So Frem, it means forward pretty much in Norwegian.
Frem.as.
Yeah.
Got it. There it is. I couldn't find that before. Thank you. All right, cool. And final message about the body in Norwegian, and then let's translate it. So just like a closing message. We do have Norwegian listeners. I know we have a lot of Swedish listeners who might be able to just about understand it as well. So, closing message about the body, if you wouldn't
mind. Okay. Let's try this one. I think you want me to say Norwegian?
Norwegian, man. Fucking Norwegians always speak English, but like it's kind of nice for the Norwegian listeners. They're like the 12th biggest audience or something.
Okay. Ha kjærlighet og takknemlighet når du trener og når du spiser og når du utøver handlinger i hverdagen, så vil resultatene og restitusjonen og healingen i kroppen komme på raskest mulig måte.
You are the cutest Vikings. And in English?
Oh, now I have to remember what I said.
Just make some new shit up. No, we'll know the difference.
Just don't think so much. No, just kidding. Love and gratitude or appreciation to your body and your actions will restitute your body the fastest, and you will get the fastest results possible.
Boom. Thank you for joining us. Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Embodiment Podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's
less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodifacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. Most people, I think, listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodifacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodifacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator Course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you.